applause to the organizers in general. Thank you. And also, really important, the folks running the sound and the camera who sit here thanklessly in the back and have to listen to all of our babbling. And they are not here for this. They do not. Like, what did you do this weekend, honey? I python snakes? I don't know. So, okay. So I appreciate you taking time at the end of the conference for all of this. So I want to start out with a little bit of a story. In 2001, my family and I moved to Switzerland. I was building a monitoring solution for Nestle. And that turned out to be pretty good for me. We were in the French-speaking part of Switzerland, right there in Vevey, which was really good for me because I grew up, my grandmother spoke to me in French. I took French in high school. It was less good for my wife. She was born in Spain. She has two brothers adopted from Colombia. She grew up in a house speaking Spanish. I didn't realize exactly how challenging it was going to be for her until we were there for a couple of weeks and she decided to drive out and meet me for lunch. And so she got on the freeway and called me and said, okay, now what was the name of that exit again? And I said, oh, it's Sheb. No problem, it's Sheb. She calls me a little bit later and she says, I think I missed the exit. What was it again? It's Sheb. So she turned around and she missed it again. And she missed it 2 more times. And each time she's calling me getting significantly more frustrated about the thing. And then it finally dawned on me what the problem was. Before I go any further, I do have to explain. Every language has rules and exceptions. In Spanish, you have rules and you have exceptions. And in French, you have rules and exceptions. If you slept through your high school language requirement, I'll put this in developer terms. It's kind of like that. You see, I kept on thinking Sheb, but what she saw was that. Sheb, C-H-E-X-B-R-E-S, Sheb, right? Perfect. No, that is not how sounds work. So I appreciate you coming to join me today as we talk about technical empathy. My name is Leon Adato. I'm a middle-aged white dude giving a talk at a conference. You really don't have to know anything else about me, except maybe that you can find me as Leon Adato on all social media. And yes, I did pick that picture because it would give you a sense of confidence that I know what the hell I'm talking about. More importantly, you need to know that this is an oyster talk. Now, what I mean by that is I have 30 minutes. In 30 minutes, I cannot teach you anything. In fact, the only thing I can do is irritate you. Now, when an oyster becomes irritated, it does one of 2 things. It creates a beautiful pearl, or it dies. I sincerely hope I do not irritate you to death today, but I thought it was a friendly gesture just to let you know. It's a possibility. Instead, what I hope is that I give you a kernel, just a grain of an idea that you can then layer over with your own experiences and understandings until what you have is something that is precious and valuable and unique to you. I learned that day that no matter how simple an interface seems to be to a developer, if regular folks can't operate it, you have a problem. If I don't put myself in the driver's seat, like for my wife, who was thinking in Spanish while I was thinking in French, if I don't do that, there's going to be a bad user experience. The lesson counts whether you're talking about something as simple as elevator buttons. It's always elevator buttons, by the way. Or in architecture. Right? I'm sure somebody thought that that door was going to work. Or operating systems. I am old. Does anyone else in the room remember Microsoft Bob? Okay, it was like 1992 or something. That is an operating system. That is not just an application. That is a whole ass operating system right there. It was awful. O-F-F-A-L. Awful. It also works for cars. That's a 1972 Maserati. Right? And if you look at that, like there's buttons inside the steering wheel, and there's a couple of buttons and knobs and like who thought that was going to be drivable? Or street signs. This is California. It's the 101 turning onto Van Ness, if you need to know. Or furniture. I don't know about, like my ass is not touching that thing. I don't, what were they thinking? But really, really elevator buttons. I said it was always elevator buttons, like for some reason. How could you screw up an elevator panel this badly? Really, and by the way, that's a picture of how to use the panel, and it doesn't match the panel. Again, the point is not that these things are ugly. They are undisputably ugly, but that some engineer somewhere really thought that that was a good idea, that it was going to be usable. But regular folks like you and me, regular users, are left feeling confused or frustrated or just plain horrified. Now, the word empathy gets a bad rap in tech. It sort of offends our Vulcan sensibilities as being too touchy-feely. So I want to give a definition. The dictionary doesn't help, as usual. That doesn't really tell me what empathy is supposed to be about. So I'm going to take a stab at it. Empathy is different from sympathy. Sympathy is where we feel the same thing as another person and we agree. Empathy is that we're able to see a situation from their point of view. We're simply able to understand what it is they're feeling and why. Okay? In tech, we sometimes get both sympathy and empathy wrong, and horrifically wrong in some cases. We ask feeling questions about technical problems, like what does that have to do with it? Or we clumsily apply sympathy or empathy and end up sounding awkward or insensitive or both. And yes, I have heard these things in actual meetings from actual humans in an attempt to make it better. It doesn't. Okay, so what is technical empathy? Technical empathy is the ability to see a technical solution or a technical choice from the user's perspective and understand what their experience is going to be like in order that we can identify gaps in the user interface or the user experience or the end result. So let's get started. I'm going to start with accessibility. Accessibility is the first part of this presentation because it should be the first part of all of our development experiences and understandings. I will accept a close second if you want to say security is first, like fine, okay. But otherwise, it should be right up there. I'm not going to belabor this point because, first of all, I am not an expert in accessibility, and second of all, I only have 30 minutes, rather. Not 30 seconds, oh my God. However, I'm going to run this down. Everything that is on the screen should be able to be read off by a screen reader. Every image should have alt text associated with it. Every video should have closed captions. Everything that uses color as an indicator should have a colorblind equivalent. And to the best of your ability and the limit of your budget, you should allow for language localization within your application. Now, is that list exhaustive? Hell no. However, if your sphincter is already clenching up as you imagine the pushback you're going to get back at the office when you try to suggest these things, you have identified your first and biggest anti-pattern. And if you're imagining that when you go back to the office and say, hey, Leon talked about this stuff for accessibility, if you're imagining that the first thing you're going to hear is, well, there's just really not enough demand for all that effort, fuck you, there is. I am sorry. There are 430 million significantly deaf and hard of hearing people in the world, 11 million in the US. Add on to that people with receptive language disorders like aphasia, 2 million adults in the US alone. Add on to that visual impairment, 245 million people with significant, I'm not talking about wearing glasses, significant visual impairment, 4 million in the US. There are 350 million colorblind people worldwide, with 12 million here in the States. Neurodiverse people, 1.2 billion people worldwide, with 50 million in the United States. 15% of the US population has some form of disability, 1.17 billion people. If you think to yourself, well, I'm not disabled, you're wrong. You're just not disabled yet. We will all, in our lifetime, suffer some form of, or experience some form of significant disability. To imagine anything less is an assumption of the highest level of hubris. Accessibility. Which takes me to the next part of technical empathy, assumptions. We are human. We make assumptions. We make assumptions a lot. But we're also folks who work in tech, which means that we are subject to a whole host of cognitive biases that regular people don't have. If you Google falsehoods programmers believe, you can spend at least a day and a half just enjoying all of the things that are in there. It's one thing to assume that the person using my accounting program understands basic accounting principles. It is an entirely different thing to assume that they speak English, or that they process information the way that I do, or that they see the way that I do, okay? But there's more. It goes beyond that. We make false assumptions about something as simple as names, okay? There is a person named William Test. If your application doesn't know that, you are in for a problem. There is also a person named Christopher Null. I know, he was on my team at Nestle. He screwed up every single field we ever did. John Wyndham Parks, Lucas Bain Harris. Which is the middle name? Which is the last name? He goes by all of those. There's my favorite, J.R.R. Tolkien. Again, which one is the middle? Don't know. Don't care. And that last one, that's my name. Except the first name is on the right and the last name is on the left, except that if I do that in your form, it's going to show up backward. That's something as simple as a name. We make false assumptions about time. For example, in 2011, in Samoa, December 29th, which was a Thursday, was followed immediately by Saturday the 31st. There was no Friday that year. Oh, good. A day in Unix epoch, this is why your sysadmin drinks heavily. A day in Unix epoch time is 86,400 seconds, except when it's not. There's also now negative leap seconds. This makes me cry. Everyone thinks, oh, standard time, it's always a whole number. No, it's not. And I don't know how stoned they were, but no amount of continental drift or curvature of the Earth accounts for that date line. We make assumptions about something as simple as addresses. Yes, there is a 0 address. There's also negative numbers. There's also addresses that don't have any numbers in them. They're just words. My favorite is at the bottom, the town of Gondal, Street 26, Building 95. Okay? So again, as developers, we are subject to our own internal biases, and sometimes those biases are not the capital B biases that we think of. They're little b biases that will screw up a program so badly, and you need to think about these things, and you need to adjust and allow for, in your application, these things to happen because not just because it's good programming or best practice, but because you are affecting the user's experience of your application when you don't. There are more pernicious assumptions that we make as developers, as people working in tech. And my point is you can't address them unless you know about them. So for example, as people in tech, we have a bias. If I know it, it must be simple and therefore everyone knows it, because I couldn't possibly know anything that's complicated. We can learn everything we need to know by looking at the data. My experience is both complete and definitive. I love that one. It's also known as the white man's assumption. Senior devs must, how many of you in the room are senior developers? How many, keep your hands up, hands up. Okay, of the senior developers, how many of you know something other people don't? Okay, they think they do, good, all right, fine. You want to work on their team because they obviously do know something you don't. Okay, if we solve 10% of the problem, we can work out the other stuff as we iterate. Ask the senior devs if that ever works. Okay, use it. This is the one that companies make, and especially folks who are tech adjacent, like product marketing managers and demand gen. Everyone understands the jargon that we internally invented. They know our internal code words for things, special definitions of industry standard terms, things like that. Those are assumptions that developers make all the time. And they make it, and what happens when you make these assumptions is they make their way into the front end of the interface. Again, frustrating users who see the word monitoring like 27 times in a row because it means different things each time, or whatever. And finally, there's the blessed MTTI of git blame. MTTI stands for mean time to innocence. Wasn't me. We make assumptions, wasn't me, so therefore I don't have to deal with it. Part 3, asking questions. You have to ask the right questions. Now, Nobel Prize-winning physicist Isidore Rabi said, Dr. Isidore Isaac Rabi said, "My mother made me a scientist. Every other Jewish mother in Brooklyn, when the kid came home, would say, 'So, Nu, did you learn anything today?' Not my mother. My mother said, 'Izzy, did you ask a good question today?' That difference, asking good questions, is what made me a scientist. We have to, as developers, put ourselves in the room and work hard to ask good questions, the right questions. Or my friend Serena Cho, who's one of the product managers over at Elastic, calls it, don't sit in a room smelling your own farts. Disclaimer before I go into any of this. These are not my ideas. I am privileged to have worked with amazing, insightful UI and UX developers. If you have not yet reached out to your UX team, tomorrow is the next best day to get in contact with them, to sit on the user experience calls that they do, to find out what it is that users who interact with your application are experiencing. Tomorrow is the second best day to do that. So I'm not going to go through every single one of these. I do want to call out this, the second last bullet. It is incredibly powerful. Before I share what this is supposed to do, I'd like to hear what you expect to happen. Before you even have them click a single thing, you hear incredible, also horrifying, also deeply disappointing things from that, but it tells you what the expectation is before you start. However, that's not the most important bullet on the screen. The most important bullet on the screen is this one. You know nothing. I don't care if you coded every line of it. I don't care if you inscribed the bits onto the platter with a magnet. You are not the user. You know nothing about this application. UX calls are best when they help you discover the things you didn't know you didn't know. A lot of people will use a user experience call to push up and to the left, to validate the things that you know and that they know. However, UX calls are always best when you're driving down and to the right. That's what you want to do. Now, how do you do that? The first thing is to remove bias out of the way you ask questions. And this is not a natural thing. I am not chiding you about not knowing how to ask questions. We all fall into this trap. But the way that these were rephrased, the way that the UX researchers I got to work with do this is artistic. Instead of saying, is that helpful, how do you use that today? Again, leaving it completely open for their experience. You are not imposing your need for validation as a developer onto the user. How is that working for you today is another one. Was that easy to do? That's the wrong thing to do. Everyone wants to say, yes, yes, it was easy. They want to make other people feel happy. Instead, how do you feel about what you just did? Instead of, did you like something better? Compare this to that, leaving the floor open. Do you think that was good? No. So when you think about that process you just did, tell me about that, okay? Instead of, it would work like this, again, don't tell them how it worked. Instead say, what would your thoughts be if I said it worked like this? Remember that you've already asked them before they started, what do you think is about to happen? Then they use it, or whatever, and you still can get their experiences. Developers really, we're focused on how it's going to work, right? And unfortunately, we pull the user into that. How am I supposed to make that happen? How is that supposed to work? They don't care. You're better off asking users what they need and why they need it. That's what they can tell you that you don't know, all right? If you're trying to understand something, can you give me a specific example? Walk me through that process as you imagine it or as you do it today, all right? Also, the last point, okay? Why do you want that? You find out incredible things when you just ask them, what is it you're trying to accomplish? Why do you need that? How would that help you get your job done? And all of a sudden, you're solving entirely different problems than you thought you were solving. There are other types of questions that also help. If you aren't, when you're involved in tasks, show me how you do this, okay? Specific examples. Tell me about the most recent time when you tried to do this thing. Walk me through those steps. I talked about that earlier. Do other sysadmins do it this way, or do they do it a different way? Not because you're trying to put a value judgment or like, well, one person does it that way and the rest of them do it this way, but just understanding, is there a range of behaviors, or are you dealing with the de facto way that this task is getting done? If you need clarification, well, when you say it seems odd for it to work like this, tell me more about why it's odd to you. Not, it's not odd to me, or it works on my machine, or all the normal things, right? It means also taking our own emotion out of it. They are not telling you you are a bad developer. They are not telling you that you have a bad idea. They are telling you about their experience with your code. They are telling you about driving to meet you for lunch and not being able to find the sign because, gosh darn it, French is really hard. Okay? So that's, that's a little bit more about it. So some final thoughts. A friend of mine, another UX researcher, Joseph Breitreiter, said to me once, he said, I am constantly correcting engineers and developers when they say, well, we have to do it this way because users are stupid. Users are not stupid. They just don't really care about your product or feature. Okay? It is user interface number 37 or whatever in their day of trying to get work done. And if you make it hard, if you create friction, they are simply not going to bother with it. They are not stupid. They are working in their own environment of high cognitive load. 95% of their brain power is going to holding their own intricate model of a problem in their head and trying to solve it. You get the other 5% whether you like it or not. Do not make your system require more brain power than that. They are not stupid. They are just trying to complete a task and go home, or go to lunch, or go to the next problem, or just move on with the rest of the things that are important to their life, because your interface is, again, not it. Okay? And whether that makes you feel good or not, okay, but that's what you're working with. They're not stupid. They're doing their own thing. So let's go back again. What is technical empathy? Technical empathy is getting out of the user's way when they're trying to accomplish their task. Technical empathy is removing that friction I talked about a minute ago to make a challenging process easier for them. Their process, not your process. Also, we do this by assuming that the user is the expert and that we know absolutely nothing. And we only break that assumption if and only if it will create a deeper connection between us and the user so that they can tell us more about their experiences. Our world is filled with examples of design by committee or design by fiat or design by accident or worse, except that the problem is these weren't accidents. These were choices, and not making a choice, not making a thoughtful choice, is a bigger problem than any of these. Not asking for feedback is not an accident. All right, I want to thank you for taking time. Congratulations, you made it. This slide will come back, don't panic, but you can get this free TCP/IP, but it's the AC/DC logo t-shirt, hat, and that'll be there. However, if you are feeling irritated, I did warn you that that might happen. However, I am ready for your questions now. But there's the QR code for the free hat, and free, like free, we'll send it to you for free, all that. Thank you for your time. And I meant it about the questions. If you got questions, bring it. Yes, sir. For those who didn't hear it, how much of this is that people went away, they got a fancy degree, or they got fancy training, and they're just not willing to listen or believe that other people have a different thing? I think that's at the core of it, is an unwillingness to listen to other people because you think you know more. The trouble is that our capability with code and our capability with making literal magic happen sometimes gets in the way of our ability to remember that the people using the application have a valid opinion also. I think that there's two dueling things. One is they couldn't possibly know because I've been studying this, but also they're going to ask me to do something really, really hard, and I'm not down for that. So I think those two things cause people more. And I will say that, those of you who are in the room probably are feeling pretty okay with everything I've been talking about. Like you get it. This is the choir, the congregation's back that way. When you're thinking about going back to the office and talking to your other team who may not feel the same way or may feel the way that you described, we have all the education. We know how, we have domain knowledge. We understand what this application is supposed to be doing for the industry or whatever. Try to refocus and say, yes, but only the users can tell us what the context of their use of our tool is. Our job is to build a tool that helps them solve their problems. Therefore, we have to understand whether or not our tool is doing that. So if you continue to shine the focus not as much on we know nothing, they know everything, but only they can tell us about their experiences and only they can tell us about the problems they're trying to solve, that makes it easier for people to sort of swallow that pride. Yes, sir. Okay, so just to repeat for those who didn't hear it, budgets aren't infinite. I know you are shocked to hear that there isn't infinite amounts of money. So if you can't do everything the user is asking for or indicating, how do you express that to the user? I would say that, first of all, I have had really good success in telling them. Like, again, budgets aren't infinite. I only have so many story points this sprint. I'm not exactly sure, which is the most important thing to you? If I could only solve one, which is the thing that you would need? And put it to them, especially if you're talking about internal users, where you have this really ongoing relationship. They will appreciate that. I was in a room where the product manager was sitting in front of 200 people who were users of our tool, of our solution, and he said, yeah, we have engineers working on adding these new features, and he was getting a lot of pushback from the audience vocally about, can you just make the web interface faster? And he said, I can't do everything. If I could give you these 3 new features or a faster web interface, which would you want? And all hands went up for faster interface. They were all willing to wait on the new capabilities that they had been asking for. And he took that, took a picture of the audience and took that back to leadership, and they're like, fine. And they moved all the resources over to that, and they delivered that instead. That was incredibly powerful. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So interesting. So the question again was, if your audience, your users are developers, how do the questions change at all? They do, because what you have to do with developers is you have to keep steering them away from helping solve the how problem. You need to continue to focus them in on, how do you do this in your day? Tell me about your day. What's step 1 for you? What's step 2 for you? And every time they veer into, well, if you just use this kind of sorting algorithm, and if you just, nope. Back over to, tell me about, thank you very much. That is really good insight. I will take that back to devs. But more importantly, redirection. More importantly, tell me, after you've done this thing, what's the next part of your activity, or where do you get hung up? So, well, I know it's only because you're using an Angular, something right, and we are looking at tooling all the time. However, back over. So you have to redirect them away. Otherwise, the questions remain largely the same. No problem. Yes?
How do you handle when there's conflicting requirements? So you talk to this group of users, they want this. You talk to this group of users, they want the opposite.
Right. So the question is, what happens when you have conflicting needs? That you talk to one group and they want A, and they talk to another group and they want B. So some of that is the normal things that as developers we all do, right? Which need has more people? Unfortunately, which need has a more financial basis? It's not no, remember, it's not no, it's just not yet. I can't remember who said it, but it was a really famous quote, no is temporary, yes is forever. So you're not, when you say no, like we're not going to do that, it's just we're not going to do that yet. And sometimes the no isn't because it has the no has a bigger population, but it's more story points. We are not going to be able to get to that without significantly more resources. However, the other piece of that is you want to make sure you're documenting both the individuals and the users and the companies they represent and all of that stuff, and you want to make sure that you are communicating that to leadership because they can't know unless they know. And if you say, look, we're going to be dealing with this because it's more achievable or because we have a slightly larger population, but this was almost as large, and if we don't deal with this, it's not going to go away, and it was a valid need. So A, document all of the needs because they all matter, but B, you have to be able to address things pretty much in the same way that you ever balance out competing priorities. Anything else? Yes, sir. Yes.
So I work in web development for a day. I have found, I pay for PyOhio. It's a special browser that allows you to see multiple views at the same time, multiple different device sizes, and it just gives so many different really good views to things you can look at right away for accessibility. I recommend that people are in this area, try out that. You can try it for free, and the author uses it, continually improving it, and I think it's a really good value to while you're working on things, see what's broken up, multiple things at the same time, and be able to deliver, the thing you're working on if you're working in web development.
Sure. Yeah, tools are always valuable. However, I will bring it back. Nothing about us without us. You cannot build a tool that is accessible to deaf and hard of hearing folks unless you get deaf and hard of hearing folks directly involved with the solution and validate your assumptions with that group. Same thing for colorblind. Same thing for visual impairment. Same thing for neurodiverse. You cannot know what the experience is unless you get those folks involved. Does that sound hard? Yes, but again, I had that slide with all the, it is the worst kind of lie to say there's no demand when I just showed you 1.17 billion potential users who right now are being underserved as a community. So it's worth the effort, and it's not hard to find folks from those communities. And as soon as you get a name for yourself and for your team as being involved and engaged and interested to hear those experiences, believe me, you will have their avid participation. Sure, absolutely. Thank you again. Have a wonderful rest of the conference. It's been a lot of fun.